Hey again, everyone. Thank you for joining me. And again, with us today, we have Connor, and we have a few more diagrams to go over. I hope that you, or if you haven't already, go ahead and look back at some of the other conversations that he and I have already had. Before we get started, though, I wanted to thank all of you who emailed us in or emailed me about the documentary. That is still going forward. Thank you for the stories. Anybody else that wants to participate, you can email me at tyrravenson. That's Tyr and another Ravenson at hot. No, actually, it's at outlook.com. Tyrravenson at outlook.com. If you would like to be considered to put in the documentary, and we can actually be as stealth as you need to be, or if you want to use your name. Either way, we can work that out later. Let me know if you would like to participate. So today, to our topic today, we have Connor. Connor, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great.
I am glad to hear from you. Connor has been very patient with me. I've had a couple of weeks of some really busy stuff, and I wasn't able to get to our last diagrams here. And looks like we have, is it three diagrams to go? Is that what we're looking
Yep,
at,
just
Connor?
three more to go.
Just three more to go. We should get that. We should be able to hammer this one out. What's the first one that we're going to look at today?
Yep. So the first one we're going to look at is the how did I do it? Or how
How
do I do it?
Okay, how do I do it? Let me open this up. Now again, these are the first times that I'm looking at these. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's a lot of information here. Let's just get to it. Connor, what are we looking at?
Yep. So one thing that I wanted to do, because anyone can just make any sort of model, but the problem is, how do you know if it's actually accurate? And for me, it came down to the right tools for the right job. So I want to let you guys know how I came up with, like, the circle of slaves, the flying monkey subroles, the mask of perfection, all of these diagrams. Like, how did I do it? And what it came down to wasn't empathy. Empathy didn't get me the answers I needed. What got me the answers I needed was something called theory of mind.
Okay.
Yeah. And so basically, how do I do it? I determined the skills I believed are required for it to say, okay, what do I need to be accurate? And then I tried them out and then find out what works and what doesn't. And that's just iteration. That's just testing. That's experimentation. That's a scientific method. Um, but what I really want to take a look at here, because this is so important, and this happened to pretty much everyone I have read their story on Quora. Pretty much every single person, they said that their empathy was used against them. And
Mm.
that's what these narcissists, these narcopaths, these egopaths, these egomaniacs, these narsoles, whatever you want to call them, that's what they do. They find someone that they know they can exploit, especially someone who's strong. And if they can exploit that on a person, someone who has a lot of empathy, they take you for a ride. And looking at that, I went, okay, so how do they use um, how do they use your empathy against you? And that's one of the big things, because they always like to shift it back to you, saying like, oh, how could you do this to me, type of thing, where they shift it. And what they do is they're trying to empathy prompt you, and that's they're baiting you. It's a baiting tactic to get you to take the bait and to feel empathy for them. But the thing is, they're playing you. They're really not on the same mindset as you. And so the problem is, when you use empathy, for perspective, right? Because you try to look beyond your own point of view, you try to look through someone else's eyes. But when you use empathy, you're going to experience your own emotions. You're going to experience your own feelings. You're going to try and visualize yourself in their situation, but you don't have their mind. You are not corrupt. You are not evil when that's one of these things here. Empathy is a check and balance to keep you from going down the wrong path, because that you care about others, and that's something that you constantly reinforce. So the problem is, with empathy, it does not mean you know what someone else would feel by putting yourself in their position. That solely relies on how like-minded you both are. If you both have empathy, if you're both empaths, then yeah, you'll probably both experience and feel something in the same way. Like, but the thing is, trying to have empathy for a narcissist, it's a fatal mistake. And that's one of the reasons why I have found that people, including myself, have had to use something that I call selective empathy. And that means there are times to use empathy and go, yeah, how does this other person maybe feel about me doing this? But there's also times where it's no, I would not do that. I would not put myself in that situation. I would never do something like this. And that's something that it's hard to be able to think like that when you're being completely mind fucked.
Hmm.
Um, but it's there. And so empathy is one of those problems where having empathy for them, it's gonna fuck you. They've designed all their little fucking manipulations around this because they realize this is a big strength that they can use against you, and that's their exploit. That's their way in. That's their way to abuse you, and they just hone in on it like it's nobody's business. And we'll take a look at the other side of this. So that was emotional perspective taking, and that's empathy. But cognitive perspective taking is theory of mind. This is where, instead of trying to put myself in someone else's shoes, I sit down at my computer and I think about how does their mind work given limitations. This is totally different. This does not involve my mind. I'm not using my mind as a starting point. So I design, explain, and predict how a specific mind will work. And that includes how it thinks and feels and why that is. I have to do that with logic and rationality or irrationality, depending. Because I could say, I'm designing an irrational mind. How does an irrational mind work? And so when a mind matches one of these mind designs, we're able to reasonably infer the intentions of the mind from the mind design. So for example, I create a mind map or a mind design, and I say, okay, with this mind map, it's going to deny things with projection, and it's going to distort anything that it can't deny. That's a very, very simple premise there, and that went straight to the mask of perfection because I found every single time it fit. It fit every single time. Every single time I looked at this, I've read so many stories on Quora, so I had all this data behind me to back me up on this. And so, yes, I have my life experiences, which are great. That's a great starting point,
Hmm.
but also having just this massive amount of information from Quora, from hundreds and thousands of people who have been in this, who have been preyed upon and who have been victims and a lot of them, it's great to see, have become survivors, and that's wonderful, that they have managed to start their healing journey or on their healing journey or finish their healing journey in terms of that, right? That is fantastic. So with cognitive perspective taking, um, this ability enables someone to understand that mental states could be the cause of and thus be used to explain and predict the behavior of others, because that's one of the main things when a victim of a narcissist, narcopath, narsehole,
Our soul.
these victims, one of the big questions is why would someone be this evil? How could they do this? How could they just be so evil? And really it comes down to the fact that it's like, yeah, they don't have the same mind that you do. You would never do these things. And these narcissists try so hard to convince you that you're the bad guy, that you would do these bad things and that you are doing these bad things. And it's something. So now I will have a little note here, to the right. It says, please note that theory of mind still has limitations. So a design mind is limited by what the designer mind itself understands. I can't design a mind with an emotion that I myself don't understand. So a mind devoid of empathy will not be able to design a mind with empathy. It's not how it works. However, a more advanced mind can design a less advanced mind, which lacks qualities the advanced mind has, but not vice versa.
Right.
Therefore, a less advanced mind cannot design a mind with qualities that it itself does not understand, qualities that are above what it can comprehend. So all that wording there is basically, I have empathy. I can design a mind with empathy. I can also design a mind without empathy. If a narcissist tried to use theory of mind, they could design a mind without empathy, just like their mind. They could not design a mind with empathy. They can try to, but they don't actually understand empathy. They can look at how other people behave and try and figure out why they have, like how empathy works, but they won't actually be able to really get it. They won't. And this, I know it's a bold claim, but it's so obvious to me. Once you read enough stories on Quora, or if you've done enough research on this, it just becomes so clear that they really are, and for lack of a better word, they are morally and emotionally retarded.
That
And
is
they don't.
that's not even. I don't think that Connor's even saying that in a derogatory sense, or they literally are. There is some retardation in their development that makes them like that. I do want to say though that as interesting as that sounds, it's got to be almost practiced to try to see it their way. I've thought about this, and I'm finding it difficult to design a mind other than my own. Even though you've got it here in the diagram and it's spelled out perfectly clear, I'm not sure that a lot of us could do that.
Oh, well, it helps to write it down on a piece of paper. I mean, trying to just do it all in your head, it's like it's a mess. But
Can you
that's
give us
why.
an example of that? Because out of everything, and I've mentioned before, these diagrams are, to me, I think they're revolutionary. This is good stuff. This is probably, if there was a highlight out of everything that we've been talking about to stop someone from being abused by a narcissist, it seems like this would be like the number one tool in your. Could you can you elaborate a little bit on what you're talking about, and how you would do that, how you would design someone else's mind? I don't want to derail you too much. Just can you take a minute or two and tell me what you mean by that?
You bet. I think that's a great question. So what I look at is I have to see behavior. I have to figure out what is someone doing. That the good news is that doesn't immediately tell me all of a sudden I know that their what their intentions are.
Mhm.
But when I start looking at their behavior and patterns of behavior, that's a big one. When I start seeing patterns of behavior, it's like, whoa, 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 this is someone has a certain goal in mind, and their behavior is orbiting around their intention. That's kind of how this works. You have a goal, and then you have all this behavior to try and reach this goal. And
Mhm.
so when I see patterns of behavior, it means they're trying to reach the same goal again, and that becomes
Well,
okay.
let me stop you on that. Let's say let's one of the videos that I'd made earlier was that, those who don't clap when you win, like a recurring behavior of them obviously ignoring anything good that happens to you or for you. Is that what you're talking about? Things like that?
Oh, that definitely that falls into it. That falls
Okay,
right
can you
into
give
it
us
because
a couple of more like that? What would you be looking for? This is what I want everyone to take away from this, from what we're talking about today. This is the first time I've gone over this with Connor, so we're all fresh when he's telling us this. But what would we be looking for so that we can avoid the narcissist? Besides that one that I just,
perfect.
besides the one I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
mentioned.
So one of the big ones that I look for when it comes to the narcissist is, do they have um do they have other people's goals in mind? Does their behavior reflect other people's goals? Because people with empathy, what I can look for to differentiate between people with empathy and people without empathy is on a day-to-day basis. And again, this takes time to gather the information. I can't just look at someone and immediately decide innocent or guilty, right? Or empathy, no empathy. It takes time, but you keep track of it, you keep score of it, and you start seeing, do they have goals are that are helping other people's goals, or does it just seem to be that everyone needs to have their goals in mind? Are they trying to have everyone work for them?
Mhm.
And it seems subtle. It is pretty subtle, but when you start looking for that level of behavior, you can start keeping score of it, and you can start saying, "Oh, that behavior there, that looks like that's going to help other people besides themselves." And it always depends on the situation, on the circumstance, but that I have found to be a extremely reliable indicator, an extremely reliable way to start narrowing down the scope, because that's one of the
They
big
can
things.
still be really slippery and slick. The ones that are really good at what they do, you'll never know what they're doing unless you have, well, obviously taken a look at some of these diagrams or been affected or influenced by it. Some of
Yep.
these people can be really, I mean, I was duped. I still get duped by people. I still don't understand. That's why I'm actually this on a personal level. We want to make sure and not do this again. There's a lot of them. I'm not sure that we can tell. I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper to this, Connor. This is that important. I think if there was a pinnacle of everything we've talked about, this is it. This is how do you know? Okay, so give me an example of something that there's a recurring behavior that somebody would, let's say that you knew him for 3 weeks at work. What would you see? How could you explain that?
All right. So one of the things that's one of the things where you once you learn about this stuff, you can start looking back and going, "Oh crap, that was a red flag that I totally didn't see." Because there are red flags popping up. One of the big ones is controlling information. So there's something called the BITE model, and that's behavior, information, thoughts, emotions. And that's what you normally see in cults. So cults try and control all that stuff. And there's also another thing, which is just 3 of those letters instead of the 4 letters, called BET. So that's behavior, emotions, thought.
Okay.
And I know this is some complex stuff here, but
It is.
um, what I have found is that by controlling information, controlling and that's why disinformation is such a powerful tool. That's why censorship is such a powerful tool.
Hmm.
Well, it's actually more like a weapon, really. It's not even a tool at that point. But these weapons are very powerful for warfare. And that be it psychological warfare or otherwise. And when you have someone who's trying to say, hey, any problems, you come to me first, that might sound good, but you have to realize from their perspective here, they don't want you to talk to other people. They want you to come to them. They
Mm.
want to have they want to be warned in case something's happening that might be bad for them. They want you to basically throw away any advantage you might have if they're the bad guy. So I mean, it sounds pretty complex, but it's simple enough um, once you see it. They do want to control the information, and so that's something where they want to try and divide and conquer, and that again, it's controlling a lot of information. The other thing that they try and do is they try and control your behavior or your emotions. They try and say, oh, you have a negative attitude if you disagree with them, things like that. And it seems so tiny, but these tiny things, it's like death by a thousand cuts. And I look for those and I see how often do those little behaviors, those little red flags, how often do those keep appearing? And from that, that's where you can start going, okay, I'm starting to see this guy's intention here. And that's actually another thing that I've noticed with some, like, I mean, for example, a covert narcissist in the workplace. They are very, very dangerous. To deal with. If you're I mean if you're trying to get another job or something, not such a big problem at that point, because at that point you're outside of their scope. They're not, unless they're involved with you personally, they're not going to bother. They're going to find a new victim in the workplace.
Hmm.
But with a covert narcissist, what makes them so dangerous is that they really are like a landmine, and you don't realize you're fucked until all of a sudden you hear the click and you
Yeah.
realize you stepped on the landmine, and it's like, oh crap, now what do I do?
Well, it sounds to me like that what you're saying is that we need to hone our skills, our people's skills, so that we watch for these things. Simply stated, I get taken still. I don't know what's happening until it's too late. I just am not cued into it. So if we can, cue into it, maybe we can notice these red flags before they happen. But we don't want to become paranoid, that maybe everything is a red flag. But I think I get that. If what you're saying is if we see a recurring behavior that's some of the things we talked about, it might be time to go no contact or low contact if you need with that narcissist.
Yes, yes. And the thing is, I mean, it is a thing where you can't move fast. Like snap judgments aren't going to work in your favor.
Well, actually, you
Like
know what? When you mention that, there are some mechanisms that we have called intuition that a lot of us have been taught to ignore. When your brain is making literally thousands of calculations, this is just a slowed down version. What you're putting out here on these on the graphics is just it's a slowed down of what's supposed to happen anyway. A lot of us have been taught not to pay attention to our gut. Sometimes if your gut's telling you, man, this guy's a POS, you need to move on, then we wouldn't even have to even breach this subject, if we
I'm
were
so
actually
glad you
paying
mentioned
attention.
that. I'm
Pardon?
so glad you mentioned that because yes, a gut feeling is not a snap judgment. A gut feeling is more than a snap judgment. Like if you're getting a bad gut feeling, please trust it.
You know what? That's true, and we're always taught not to trust that, and so then we end up with these with a long conversations about how to avoid it. Maybe we can train ourselves back into our natural state of not putting up with it. But in the meantime, we have to have this conversation. This is everyone that's listening to this now knows exactly what you're saying. It's just put out. Finally, someone's put it out in a clear way. This is what we've been trying to do the whole time. If you do figure out what's happening with, especially the covert narcs, if you don't understand the overt narcissism, if you don't get that, then I don't have any help for you. It's really
Oh
the
yeah,
covert that we're talking about. Yeah, if you can't tell someone's a son of a bitch, coming from anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you on that, but yeah, I mean, it seems like we're making these calculations, or we should be, if they haven't been damaged too bad, and it should be almost second nature. But this is just kind of like a slowed down version, is what it looks like.
yeah. Well, I mean, one of the problems is people don't wake up in the morning going, "I'm prepared to go to a psychological war with someone." That
Yes.
it's not. And so because of that, we don't have our guard up by default. And so I've noticed this is another one that you can look at. The very start of a conversation, before you start getting into a conversation with someone, with a covert narcissist, they might say something like, "Hey, don't make me out to be the bad guy." And they just open with that, and you're like, "What?" And that can throw you off. But what you have to realize is that kind of crap there, that actually is that's usually them telling on themselves that they've been making you out to be the bad guy to other people behind your back. It really is one of these things. And the things it's like the very first sentence right out of their mouth, and it's like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we're not on guard. We like, I mean, and like and like you said, right? We can't be paranoid, and I don't know if constant vigilance is going too far into the paranoia side where we need to always be on guard, because that's not a good way to live your life. I mean, it's something you might have to do if you're surrounded by these assholes who are out to destroy you because they see that you're a good person,
Well, I was
and it's
actually
like,
told by one of them from the gaggle of these people that uh, they actually said, not everybody's out to get you. I heard that, and I was like, yeah, they are out to get me, and you're part of the problem. Yeah, when they tell you that, oh yeah, and I started, yeah, because they do travel in packs too. It's whether it's families or if you're married into a pack of them, or whether you're working with a bunch of them. There's never just one. It seems that there's always it's like a frameworks that they exist in. Like I said, it could be work, it could be family, it could be both, or in between. But yeah, they're not out to get you. Boy, that's a red flag. That means you damn sure are.
yeah, actually, that's something called the gift of fear. If they start promising you things, or they start saying things to you like, "I'm protecting you,"
Mm.
watch out, because you know that's that the
We're
gift of
we're from
fear
the
is
government and we're here to help. That's your.
oh, that's yeah, that's
Know that
crazy.
if you hear that, run.
Oh, no kidding. And yeah, it really is this thing um where if you look at the gift of fear, they promise you something, or it's unsolicited. You're not asking for it. All of a sudden, they're just saying that they'll do something for you, and it's like, well, that sounds good, but a lot of these gifts of fear, what it turns out is this is going to be what they're going to do to screw you over. If they're saying they're protecting you, they're behind your back, trying to discredit you, trying to destroy your reputation, character assassinate you. The complete opposite of protecting you. And yeah, that's another sort of behavior that you can look for. Again, look for these behaviors, and it's there. These behaviors are there.
They are there. How about if a third party comes to you and they say, "Well, so and so says they're worried about you."
Oh yeah,
Worried
isn't
about
that
you. That
great?
means that translates into that they the truth about them. Oh, I'm so worried about him. I'm so worried. And why are you so worried? What's the worry?
Oh yeah,
We
well
want to
that
make you out
was
to be
the
crazy is what it is. And
yeah.
see, if we worry about you and you're crazy, everything that comes out of your mouth is going to be questioned, right? Right.
Oh
Okay.
God, yeah, and yeah, that's exact phrasing that was used by a covert narcissist on me. I'm worried about you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, as a
I've heard
person, he's
that.
worried about me. This is
So,
wonderful.
yeah, so what's the difference, the key difference in theory of mind? Or did you already go over that? What's the difference in the pink
No,
box?
I haven't. That's the last little part here. So yeah, so
Okay.
what's the big difference between emotional perspective taking, empathy, and theory of mind? And that's the cognitive perspective taking.
Okay.
The key difference is theory of mind is to purposely not use your own mind as a starting point. If you're using your own mind as a starting point, you're using empathy. And that's fine because empathy requires you using your own mind as a starting point. Like if you have a friend that isn't a malicious backstabbing son of a bitch, um, then
Hopefully
then
your friends aren't.
empathy is probably going to give you an accurate representation of their mind. It's that's why us survivors can take such comfort in meeting other survivors, because our empathy, it works with them, because when we have empathy for them, we have an accurate representation of their mind, because it's just like our mind. It's working from the same sort of rule set. Whereas theory of mind, it's a mind becomes capable of understanding how drastically different minds think, and are able to use this understanding to explain and even know said mind better than one being of said mind. I know that's a lot of words, but basically theory of mind is what's going to allow you to understand narcissists, because you
That's it.
cannot,
I want
because
to at some point in time I want to revisit that as its own topic. I think that this is the finale. This is what everything we've been talking about leads up to that. That's the point right here. This is the point. This theory of mine. So,
yeah, and that's the thing. It's the right tools for the right job. Because if you have the wrong tools for a job, you can. I mean, just like in the real world, in real life, in construction, for example, if you have the wrong tools for the job, you can end up dead.
mhm.
And so it's the right tools for the right job. You need the right tools, and empathy is not the right tool when you're trying to understand a narcissist. It will not help you. Yeah, I mean,
Knowing the mind of thy enemy to know the mind of thy enemy. That's it.
yeah, and yeah, that's the last little point there. So yeah, what you have to do, and I've noticed this with all survivors, whether you want to know it or not, every single survivor has had to master selective empathy. They've had to say, this person does not get my empathy, and it's learn when not to use this tool. And that's like, this person's a bad person. They do not get my empathy. And because that's what they use to try and exploit you over and over and over. And it keeps, and the thing is, we don't really detect this because we're too busy going, oh well, I have empathy, of course I have empathy. But that's the point, is they're trying to get you to use the wrong tool. They're trying to get you to use the wrong tool so that you'll fuck yourself over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you have to learn when not to use this tool. So when they're trying to do empathy prompts on you, you go no. You say no, and you have a boundary. You set a goddamn boundary down.
Yes.
And you don't give your empathy out for free. You don't do it. And yeah, I mean, when we use our empathy and decide what we think or feel is what the ego path's mind must think or feel, it's a fatal mistake. And this is where they get you over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And by committing this mistake, we're guilty of normalizing and humanizing a maladaptive and depraved mind, because their mind is not like ours. They are not out to help other people
That
at
is
all.
so hard for many of us to understand. It is for me. I think that everybody thinks the way I do. Set a guide. Listen to Connor. Set a goddamn boundary. That was the words of wisdom. Like,
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are. Anyone who's trying to use empathy, even a self-actualized mind, right? The peak of a human being, the very peak of the best. If you try and use empathy, it's still going to fail. It's going to always fail to understand a depraved mind, because a self-actualized mind is so much more than a depraved mind. So, like, you're not going to be able to just because you're operating on other rules. You're not the depraved mind is lesser and follows different rules. The perspectives are incompatible,
oh,
and
I've watched.
so
Well, it's actually very compatible as long as you're playing their game. And I've watched that with world stage religions where some people believe one thing and another believes another, and one plays right into the hand. I watch this and it irritates me to no end. But it is very compatible. I disagree that it's purposefully and useful. Well, until you figure it out, and then it's not compatible. But yes, it's not compatible for you, but it works very well for the narcissist, the narcissist. Yeah.
yes. Oh, yeah. You know, I should mention that I'm talking about incompatibility in terms of the minds aligning to the same goals and the
Oh yeah,
same
you're right. No,
like
because they only have
emotions.
their own goals. They have their goals, and they may pretend that your goals are important. And if your goal plays into their goal, it's fine. But if not, watch out.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's they're not out there for you. They're out for themselves,
Right.
and the thing is they're actually out to hurt other people. That's another thing. Like I mean, we covered that with the dark pentad of egopathy, with the five main traits there that I put on there: the sadism, the narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy. uh, I believe narcissism was the fifth one there. So yeah, sorry, maybe Machiavellianism. Sorry, that was the fifth one.
Have the
I
right
missed that.
tool for the job. You have to understand we have to practice a little bit on seeing things from their distorted perspective if we're going to be protected from them. So, what
Yeah,
is the
thanks.
next? Are we good with this one? What's the next
Uh,
diagram that we're
let me
going?
just let me finish it up. I got the one last
Okay.
sentence, but yes, that actually was a great way to end it. Yeah, for decent human beings, for us to gain an accurate perspective of the truly evil and criminal mind, you have to use theory of mind. It's the weapon of choice. It's the right tool for the right job. So
Okay.
again, empathy, you can use empathy to go and it'll work for people who are like-minded. These ego paths are not like-minded to you. If you have empathy and you're trying to use empathy to to somehow get a good grip on the mind of an ego path, you're not. You cannot do it with empathy. You have to use theory of mind.
Right. Good job. Okay. What is the next one? We have two more graphics to look at. What is your next one?
Perfect. So yes, the next one is called Higher Man.
Okay, let me find Higher Man. Okie dokie. Ah, we got Nietzsche in here. Good stuff. I'm ready. I'm ready
I'm
to
glad
hear
you've heard
this.
of him.
Yes. I think most people have heard of Nietzsche.
Yeah. So let's go over just a very quick overview of this. So yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche is a guy who has come up with some pretty amazing ideas for even for his time, because he was pre-internet. So being able to come up
Really? Just a little.
yeah, and yeah, it really is this thing where he came up with all these ideas like morality and master morality, and then the herd morality, and all this stuff, and this is really at the root of it. Like he never really said narcissism in his stuff, but it's so clear to me when he was talking about the slave, and that's one of the people that he talks about. Um, it was so clear to me that's your ego path, that's your narcissist. It's so crystal clear to me. So we'll just kind of go over this basic thing. So Friedrich Nietzsche came up with a very basic thing where he says you have an individual, and then that individual is going to belong to one of two groups. They're going to either be part of the herd or they're going to be a higher man. And I mean, this gets pretty brutal, but the herd it's a collective. It's you're either with us or against us mentality. and they never really amount to anything. They're used in like wars and stuff, but they never actually accomplish anything of their own making. They can't. They're part of the herd.
Mhm.
Whereas the higher man is someone who is an individualist. They are their own person, and they will create invaluable progress. And you have two different types of higher man. You have the ones that are the known hero, and their name still carries influence. So, when you hear quotes from Albert Einstein, his name alone, if I use a quote from Albert Einstein saying, creativity is just knowing how to keep your sources anonymous, something like that. That is a very powerful quote. As soon as I attach the word Albert Einstein to it, that becomes very powerful.
Mhm.
Then you have the unsung hero, and only their work remains. And I mean, a good example is who invented the first house. Way back, who invented the first house? We use houses all day, but we don't know who invented the first house.
Mhm.
So it's just things like that where their work remains, and people have built upon it. They've built upon that initial framework, but no one knows. You can try and guess, but you don't know.
Sure. Sure.
So, and eventually all the known heroes are generally going to become unsung heroes. I mean, maybe in a book somewhere you'll have some guy's name written down, but if no one knows about the person, it's not gonna, it doesn't have any persuasive power. That's really what the known hero has on their side. So the higher man who's going to really make a big impact, they're going to have to be a known hero. It's going to have to be someone. Someone's going to have to be the known hero in order to really make that big impact, that big difference.
Mhm.
You can still, I mean, you still do great things with creating valuable progress as an unsung hero, but it's always going to be the known hero that can accomplish more, just because they they have this influence. And whereas the other person, they go, "Well, who are you?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm just some guy who figured some stuff out." Ah, well, I don't want to listen to you. You don't have you don't have a PhD. You didn't go to a university. Why do I have to listen to you?
Mhm.
And they're very, very credentialist.
Right. Right.
so, so on the other hand, we have the herd, and the herd is the collective. It's the you're either with us or against us, and the herd is generally divided into two types. You have the cattle or the last man, and that's your quintessential mediocre man, your sheeple, the follower of the herd. Um, they're never really going to amount to anything, but they want to live a happy life, and that alone isn't a bad thing. But they don't want to really accomplish anything. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They're happy in their comfort zone. But what happens is you have the slave, and this is the other part of the herd. So you have the ruler of the herd, and it might sound a little weird, like why is it called the slave if he's the ruler? Well, the slave is a slave to their ego. The slave is the enemy of the higher man, and by extension, the human race. The slave is going to try and fuck everything the higher man does, and the slave will use his army of the herd to destroy the higher man, to try and stop the higher man from doing what he wants to do. And
Mhm.
basically, the slave will be able to then uh, basically ego stroke themselves and go, haha, I stopped you from doing what you wanted to do. And we'll take a look at the notes here on the right.
Okay.
So what happens is, yeah, the slave amasses an army of last men, a herd, and then the slave rules their herd by scapegoating the higher man for all their petty problems. So, hey, this higher man, he's the problem, and if we get rid of him, all your problems will be solved. And the last men, the sheeple they are, will buy it, and they're willingly used to destroy the higher man, justifying it away with herd morality. And herd morality basically inverts everything the higher man holds, um, sort of like the master morality. He holds strength as a good thing, whereas the herd sees strength of you being your own person as a bad thing. It really is. So that's sort of collectivism versus individualism there.
God,
And
I
yeah,
got to hold
slave.
my tongue on this one, Connor, because there's a lot of movements right now that get a lot of press that this is exactly what we're talking about, and I don't want to get political. So y'all just have to,
Yeah, yeah, we have to
you'll have
keep
to
it
infer.
very, very.
No, I'm saying no. They're gonna have to. You'll have to infer what you want out of that because this, God, that just pisses me off. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. The slave
No,
produces nothing for the below and destroys all above. Nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's true. And the slave getting into power only allows them to destroy even more of the higher man. Like here's, I'll kind of talk about this. Power doesn't corrupt people. Power reveals corruption. If you want to test the true character of someone, give them power.
Hmm.
And that's a quote by Abraham Lincoln. And so when you look at this stuff, the slave really is out to get power, to abuse it and maintain their own power, but they're not actually trying to give. They're just trying to take. And I mean, that's your narcissist. Again, narcissists aren't givers, they're takers.
Hmm.
and and so yeah, the basically you'll have the slave feigns innocence and concern under the guise of her morality and calls for equality. Oh, the higher man has wronged us, but if you put us in power, you put us, and again, us is them, the ruler, the herd in power. um then the slave gets in power, and then he fucks everything, or she fucks everything. And the slave does not desire to change the world for the better. The slave doesn't want to put in the work to change the world for the better. The slave wants to take. You put me in a position of power so I can take more. I want to take. Now, this right here is a very nice basic thing, but I haven't really explained how this works in a cycle. I've explained that the slave is the enemy of the higher man. And well, whether you like it or not, if the higher man, the slave is out to destroy the higher man, whether you want to believe it or not. That's irrelevant.
I believe it. I can see it clearly.
So we'll take a look. We'll apply this concept on a larger scale. So to do that, we're going to use this, and we're going to make use of Carlos Sapola's taxonomy of stupid.
Is that the next? Diagram that we're going to go
Yep,
to, or
that's the last one that we got.
that's the last one of the last? Okay, let me find it here. This one looks a little bit different than the others. I'm curious. Okay, I've got it up. Carla Cipolla, Taxonomy of Stupid.
Perfect. So there's a lot of ways to define what stupidity is, but I like Carlos Sapola's taxonomy of stupid because it puts it sort of in a consequence way, in an objective consequence way. So we'll take a quick look at the bear graph on the top left, where this is his taxonomy. So you have intelligent people in the top right. And in that quadrant there, you have benefits others and benefits the self. That's an intelligent person. That does not mean you're a bad person, does not mean you're a selfish person. You're helping yourself and you're helping others. That's great. I think that everyone should aspire to be that. I think that
Okay.
that would make the world a much better place.
Sure.
You have givers who will benefit others, but they cause losses to themselves. And givers, unfortunately, another term for them is the naive. They think, okay, I give you something, you'll give me back something in return, and then depending on what
Yeah.
happens, you might not get something back, and so that's it. And it's not just it. These things aren't just labels that apply to a person for the rest of their life. There's moments where an intelligent person can become a stupid person. It happens. And so that's the next one here. So you have a stupid person where that's losses for themselves and losses for others. So they do something and they not only hurt themselves, but they hurt everyone around them, or they screw everything up. And it's not necessarily malicious. It's just that they did something and they caused themselves losses and caused other people losses. That's not to, again, that's we use intelligence and stupidity not in terms of brain power. We're just using it in terms of, did you cause wins or did you cause losses? So that's how Carlos Sapola's taxonomy works. Then you have in the bottom right the bandit, and the bandit will benefit themselves and they're going to cause losses for others. Now that's your taker. You have givers in the top left. Well, guess who your taker is going to be in the bottom right? So we'll move on to the second one here in the middle for the taxonomy of stupid. And you'll notice that I have included Friedrich Nietzsche's groupings of his classifications, where you have under intelligent, you have the higher man. Under bandit, you have the slave with his little crown, little egopath crown. Then you have under givers, you have the herd, and under stupid, you have the last man. And because it depends. You can have people in the herd who are genuinely trying to do the right thing, but they're causing losses to themselves. They are benefiting other people. They're benefiting the bandit for sure, and they're benefiting other people in the stupid category, but they're not helping themselves, and that can be a problem. Especially, I've noticed this. There's two big definitions for altruism, and one definition of altruism includes sacrifice for yourself, and the other one does not.
Mm-hmm.
And I have decided, and this is my personal belief, I have decided that altruism with sacrifice is wrong, and that is incorrect, because being altruistic and sacrificing yourself and causing loss to yourself, that makes you a giver. That does not make you intelligent. Intelligent would be being altruism without hurting yourself in the process. And that's how I look at that there. So yes, true altruism to me is one that does not involve sacrifice to yourself, because that's still harm to yourself, and so I don't consider that 100% altruistic. So that, I know that's a big one, because that's one of the big ways that a lot of manipulation happens. Oh, you want to be a good person? Well, you better give me some of your lunch sandwich and hand it over. And it's like, oh, but I need that to eat. It's not because I have enough. I actually need this. And it's like, no, I need it. I was too lazy to pack my own lunch today, so enable me, give me your food.
I think a lot of people are coached into being givers, and I think it's just disgusting what the people that are in charge or in influence presently that teach that. The bankers, God, I gotta just shut my mouth. I'm sorry, keep going. Seriously, man, I will end up saying something, and I'm trying not to, but this is not just on a personal level. This is on a global level. What you spelled out here so clearly it's the micro and the macro at the exact same time. And what you said about that, you're right. You don't want to be the giver. Losses to yourself. It makes perfect sense. And so many of us, even people that aren't really affected by narcissists, have that mindset. And it's like a total loss for everybody. It doesn't make any sense. And so many of us are just taught that, actually conditioned into that.
That's exactly it. And the thing is, if you look at it this way, and this gets a little scary here, but if you owned a bunch of slaves, how would you ensure that they never became more powerful than you? Well, you take a cut of whatever they earn, right? So that they can never have more than you. You just keep.
You mean
taking
like fractional reserve lending?
Right. Well, and another quote right now this is a very, very touchy quote, right? If taking 100% of your profit is slavery, what percentage of taking your profit isn't slavery? And that's a very touchy quote, because at what point does it become, I'm allowed to take 25% of what you have? You earned 100%, I'm going to take 25% of it. At what point does that become, wait a minute here? Am I some kind of giver here where I'm working and I'm causing loss to myself? And I mean, and again, the situations can call for it. It's not necessarily intelligence. It's literally your position in life. It's what's happening. Are you benefiting others, but are you causing loss to yourself? And that's where there's that sort of gray area.
It's not even a gray area. They have us set up like that right now, Connor. This is a world problem. What you're touching on is a little bit out of our scope of talking about narcissism or the personal like within family units, etc. This is a setup. And yeah, when I mentioned fractional reserve lending, that's exactly what I meant. And that's exactly what's going on. How do you escape it? It's not on his diagram. There's not a way. Not at this point.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That is out of my scope of what the diagram covers.
Hey, but you're explaining it perfectly. If y'all want to just lay a template over one over the other, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. It's like, well, how much do I owe you, and why do I owe it to you to begin with? Well, it's mine. I worked for it. But no, you get to pay a little piece to us, and you don't even know who we really are. But we have this system set up. Oh yeah, and they're just a bunch of bandits anyway. They are definitely the bottom right bandits. Yeah, again, I didn't shut my mouth, did I? Okay. Next. Keep going. My apologies. Okay.
Oh, no problem, man. I know it is. This is like very like this is a very hot topic if anyone does this, because this is like, no one wants to be taken advantage of in life. That we don't want to be taken advantage of. We don't want to be taken for a ride and screwed over. And this kind of, starts talking
Well,
about
these
that.
kinds of systems that are set up, and this is where okay, let me just go and say, these kinds of systems that are set up in our, I'm giving you air quotes, governments, make it okay for the narcissist to do the same shit that they've been doing to you. It is like a domino effect, and the people that are currently, I keep saying currently because it's not going to be this way forever, currently influencing policy, are, whether it's through media or movies or laws, they are making it so, I don't want to say people have to behave this way, but rather than think about what they're doing, and some do, that's the narcissist, they know what they're doing, but some are kind of, I'm going to say even almost forced into this kind of behavior. Like everyone kind of behaves a little bit like this because of what they've set up. We are not able to not be givers with losses to ourselves as long as these mechanisms are in place. So what you're explaining here, it is, I know it's out of our scope of what we normally, but you and I were talking before we started before we started the video, that this is some stuff that I was looking at. It's exactly the same. It's exactly it. And it is a domino effect. Just to stop you in the middle there and bitch about the world governments for a minute. But yeah,
Oh,
you almost don't have a choice. Like you and I are at least looking at this, and the people who have, made it this far in these discussions, these are things that we're contemplating. We want to be the higher man. We don't want to be the last man. And we definitely don't want to be the slave, because we know what that does to others. We're team players when they're not. Well, they've got a very small
that's
team. They have a very small team of players, and we're not in that. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
yeah. George Carlin, I remember he did a bit on
Yeah,
that.
listen to
But yeah,
George.
it's true. It's true that the slave is not a team player. The slave wants pawns. He wants to be the king, or she wants to be the queen, and then you have a bunch of pawns, expendable pawns. They're not team players. They
And we
amass an
just keep
army.
putting these people, we just keep electing these fuckers, man. We just keep putting them in until man wakes up from this slumber. This is what we have to deal with. And you're going to run in, at least in our personal lives, we can start to understand it, especially with things that are laid out this clear. But this is what's been going on before we were ever even born. This
Oh
has been
yeah.
happening for a really long time. I don't know how else to say it. This has been going on for a really long time. This is a setup. This is the setup, and this is what is enabling your narcissist to behave the way they do, is because of this system that's in place. As I'm pointing at my computer screen, talking to you. All right, continue.
Thank you. So yes, and that was absolutely brilliant how you laid it out there with the higher man, the slave. At like you got to keep that. You can keep that in the discussion.
Okay, will do. Will do.
Yeah. So let's move to the third stage here, the third part here in Carlos Apolo's taxonomy. So the one on the right here. So I've shown you Carlos Apolo's taxonomy, and I've shown you how the classifications are put in place, and then what happens. So then what happens is, if we start down at the bottom right on the slave, you can see that the slave envies and hates the higher man. So that's their motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's follow from the slave the red arrow. So from the slave, they're going to form and rule over the herd, which is going to consist of the last man.
Giant triangulation over populations.
Oh yeah. It's all about getting the useful idiots, right? It's getting the stupid people on board. It's getting
the flying monkeys. This is the flying monkeys. The slave, who is a slave to their ego, will turn all the neighbors and the family and your friends all against the higher man that we're trying to at least emulate or be.
That's right. And that's the thing, right? So you have this herd, and the herd also consists not just of flying monkeys, but also people who think that they're doing the right thing because they've been given disinformation. Surprise, surprise, the slave is a filthy liar who has lied to everyone to make the higher man out to be this evil person, where really it's the slave that's the piece of shit all along. And
God, this
so,
is so it. This is the pinnacle of everything that you've been. I had no idea it was going to land on this note when I mentioned to everyone that I have come in cold with your diagrams. There's a reason why. I am absolutely in shock and awe how clear that is. This is it. This is this is the same exact thing. The micro and the macro are the exact same thing. The people that are the overlords right now are making it possible for these fucking assholes to act the way they do to us, whether it's in court or family court or laws, media. This is why. This is exactly why. They know this too. They know exactly what they're doing. Ooh,
yeah.
continue.
Oh man, thank you. And so yeah, so from the higher man here, when this cycle happens enough, enough good people are taken out of being able to do a good job and help other people. All you're left with is a bunch of the slaves at the top, right? A bunch of egopaths in charge, and then it's fucked. And
Uh-huh.
so if we look from the higher man down here, the higher man is forcefully stopped from benefiting others. That's the little note I have at the bottom right here.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, the slave of their ego gathers together a bunch of last men to form their herd, the herd morality and collectivism. That's really what it comes down to. It's whatever their herd morality is, it's always about collectivism, which is always about do whatever the ruler of the group says, which is the
Uh-huh.
slave. It's always about the slave, and then the slave will say we, but it's them. It's all them making all the decisions for everyone, saying, "Hey, I'm in charge of making all the decisions." And yeah, it basically they aim towards scapegoating and overthrowing the higher man. And Carlos Cipolla explains the danger. He says the only way a society can avoid being crushed by the burden of its idiots is if the non-stupid work even harder to offset the losses of their stupid brethren. But here's the thing: if enough higher men are taken out, enough intelligent people are taken out, the, how are you supposed to have one higher man out of 100 freaking slaves try
Well,
and do 100 higher man's work? You can't. It's
what do you
fucked.
think
And
happened during the Bolshevik Revolution when over there in Russia when they took all of their scholars and their artists and their thinkers and they threw them in the gulag?
yeah,
That's
the
what
brain
and that's
drain.
what's happening now. This is exactly what's happening now. So I get just a little bit heated up. I'm looking at this, and you're right. It is a very sensitive topic. That's exactly what they're doing. What if they just left? Well, God, you all are in big trouble if they just leave Connor and me. What are y'all going to do then?
Yeah, exactly. It's like how are just a few higher men supposed to combat? I mean, how's 1% supposed to combat the 99%?
The stupidity, the losses for self and losses for others, as long as they have their football and beer and Doritos, that's about all they care about. And the slave again laughs his ass to the bank. Oh,
Yep.
this is infuriating. Look what you did. Keep going.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So yeah. The slave stops enough intelligent people with their army of losers, leading to the conclusion of society being destroyed. And a bunch of good people were scapegoated along the way more and more as things got worse and worse. That's the thing. This is a snowball effect too. It's not just a domino effect, it's also a snowball effect. You have more and more slaves all scapegoating everyone else and always scapegoating, and it just becomes this big scapegoating shitfest, and nothing's actually getting done. Nothing's actually getting solved. It's fucked. And the thing is, in the past, societies have collapsed, but we've never had technology like we do now. So we don't know how bad the bounce will be, if there's even going to be a bounce after the fall. So
We're
it's
there now. I'm convinced. I don't like to be black pilled about this, but a lot of people were kind of hanging their hat on some of these leaders that they thought were going to help us. And those leaders didn't do shit. They didn't do anything. And here we are, and it's just about to get worse. And it's not, this is a worldwide problem. The only way to win is not to play, no contact. How do we do that? I have no idea. And I'm speaking in, like I said, again, in our personal lives and in our political lives as well. How? I don't know. I have no idea. There just aren't that many higher men out there. There's just not. And there's a lot of slaves. There's a lot of last men. The herd is huge and it's getting bigger every day. Taxonomy is stupid. Good Lord. I don't think it could have been put any better.
And yeah, I mean, isn't it stupid, right? Like when you think about it, isn't this just the stupidest thing? Because it's like, well, of course we want good people in charge, and yet what happens? The good people get thrown out of power, and then you just have a bunch of assholes scapegoating everyone. It's just It's like, uh-oh, now what? Like,
It's despicable behavior on their part, and for some reason, the human species decides that 80, well, it's the 80-20 rule, I think, is where 20% of us do the work of the other 80% or something similar to that. And those of us that are trying to do the right thing and then getting fucked in the end by these people. And I'm going to tell you again, this is what you've put out here is not, this is by design. You may have stumbled on it. I don't think that you actually knew that this is by design from the people that are currently influencing us, but they know this. This is how they do it.
oh, I actually kind of, as I was going through this, I'm like, you know what? This is looking like exactly, because I design systems for a living, and I'm
Yeah.
looking at this, I'm like, this seems to be by design. This does not seem to be a
This
coincidence.
is scary, dude. I'm going to tell you right now. This is almost spooky. This last graphic that we're looking at is exactly this is they know what they're doing. And you know what's even scarier about it is the slave with the crown. Because at first I didn't understand what you were telling us with that, and it's perfectly clear that this is an inversion of life. It's an absolute inversion of life. This is not the way things are supposed to be.
And that's the slave morality.
Mhm.
That's actually what Friedrich Nietzsche talks about, where it's a complete inversion. And yeah, that's what we're seeing here. So
God, I
Nietzsche
got
was
chills on that. Man, Connor. All the folks that are listening, please share this because I'm not just saying this because Connor's, I'm very happy that he contacted me and I'm honored that you wanted to do this on my channel, but I really wish this would get further wider than this. This is, if more people understood this, maybe we could at least cultivate some higher men and women, higher people that we don't need any more herd. We don't need any more last men and women. We don't need this. There's so many people that are so just, and I don't mean this in that way, retarded. They are. They just don't understand. And the slaves are just laughing about this. I know they know this. This is by design, Connor.
and
What you put
unfortunately,
out here, what you painstakingly put together in these graphs is something that someone already put together, knowing how they were going to use it. God, there's not another explanation. Does anybody, if you all have a better explanation than this, let us know in the comments section, because I'm telling you right now, what Connor stumbled on this, or not stumbled, but that's not the right term. What you formulated is, basically you reversed engineered what the slaves have done to us.
yeah, that's part of it. And I mean, and again, Friedrich Nietzsche already had all the framework even back then. It's just one of those things where I just sort of connected to scientific, one scientific, Carlos Sapolo's taxonomy stupid model, and then combine it with a classification of Friedrich Nietzsche, and it's like, oh, look at that! Like, it just there it is.
This is amazing stuff. I wish we could just go on and on and on, but I think that this was the answer. This last graphic is spooky. It's very scary, and it's 100% spot on correct. I think that's why it is so scary. But
Yeah.
man, I
And what
really
we need,
appreciate it. Huh?
no, oh, sorry. What we need is we need a reverse of this. So instead of the slave destroying the higher man with the herd, we somehow need the higher man to either elevate the herd into being higher men or somehow have the herd attack the slave. I mean, and then that kind of sucks because then that's playing their game. But
I'm not
like,
above playing their games anymore. I'm going to tell you right now. No, we need to take. I'm not. I've had. I can't tell you who it is. Someone who's actually pretty. We'll say notorious. When I said our enemies that are attacking us, I'm quite willing to take a page out of their book. I'm done. And it wasn't until you know what? And I did actually was able to get into the mind of some of the people that were abusing me in my life. So I think earlier on we were talking about, I said I didn't understand, but I think I actually do. Thinking back, once I started figuring out how they behaved and started to operate in that framework, I was able to recover what was mine. And so I'll have to revisit that and look at this again. But um, yeah, I don't know how else to do it except to play their game a little bit. It seems
yeah,
to be working for
and
them.
unfortunately, I mean, yeah, the winners write the history books, right? So who's to say that a winner, a good guy, has never played dirty and then wrote in the history book, "Oh no, I played fair and square." You know, who's to who's to say?
Well, it's there. What's there's a all's fair in love and war. He said
Oh yeah, yeah, that's
that.
one.
Well, and these people take that to heart, though. I don't know how to convince the masses that there's something more important than Doritos and light beer. I don't know how. You can try to, lead these people, but typically they're not going to care. They just simply aren't. I mean, I like cat videos as much as anybody, but that's kind of the mentality. You're talking about people who have, a little less intelligence, maybe, they don't care. And I don't know how to reverse it. All I know is that this is 100% correct. I mean, I see what this is, and it explains it very well. Like I said, I can't add or I wouldn't take anything away from any of these conversations that we've had. It's spelled out so perfectly clear. I want to see people take and share this though. I want people to share this around. You did have kind of a mile marker on Quora, didn't? Can you tell us how many views you got on Quora on this?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been a while since I took a look, but I definitely got tens of thousands of views looking at the post. I couldn't tell how many people actually would watch the videos, but there was enough people
Nice.
that because I spammed like this post everywhere to every little space on Quora that I could. Like I
Nice.
spammed it, but
That's what I'm talking about. That's you got to spam it. We got to get this out. If this were a college or just a junior high school course of this is how people behave, watch out, I think our society would be so much better.
And I think that's one of the ways to try and I think that's one of the ways to try and reverse it, where all of a sudden the higher man is then influencing the herd, and then having the herd not actually commit to being a herd, right? Like have those people be their own person, because that's one of the big problems here. The slave can only pull this shit on the higher man by amassing their own little fucking army. They
Mhm.
can't do this shit alone. They have to have their fucking army to take down the higher man.
Connor, you are definitely a higher man. This is very good stuff. Folks, you got to see it here. I'm very thankful that you came to my channel to share this. And like I said, go back, look at the other videos where we were talking, the other discussions started. I mean, we've got several hours of material on this alone. And but there's no fluff in there. Every single bit of it has value along the way. And I'm super impressed with this last one. Like I said, it kind of gave me some chills. Like, oh man, this really is what it is. So, Connor, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I really do appreciate it. It's just done so well. And I'm glad that you're getting a lot of views on Quora. Is there a way if you had if somebody wanted to contact you, or do you have a website or somewhere that you would like to
Well,
direct folks?
I do have a dedicated email address.
Okay.
Let me make sure can make sure it's right.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
yeah, you know what? It's egopathtime, all one word, at gmail.com.
Excellent. Egopathtime@gmail.com.
Yep, and it's all one word. I'll even send you a little link there.
Ah, perfect.
So
Got it.
that's the one. And that is my dedicated thing, my
Perfect. I'm
dedicated
glad to
email for
share
this
that
stuff.
with us. And also too, Connor has. I guess it's okay to go and tell. I don't know in what capacity, but we've been talking about doing a documentary on narcissism, and I think Connor has agreed to participate. Like I said, I don't know in what capacity yet, but or if you wanted to contact him as well through that email, I think that would be okay. So again, I thank you so much. I can't believe this is. It's so clear. I'm so impressed, and no one's done it. This is the first time I've seen anything like this. And
Yeah, same here. I was looking. I was like, has anyone done this before? Like, it's
No,
just
no one's done this before, and it's just on time too, because this is an epidemic the way people are behaving. It is epidemic. It really is. And why, the how, I don't know why and how, but this is definitely what's going on. And I think the further that we push this out, and the more people that see this, uh, I mean, the benefits are endless with this. It's something that really needs to be seen and talked about. Did such a great job, Connor. I appreciate it. Is there any parting words before we sign off here and thank our people for watching? Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I do actually. I don't know if you have enough time for it, but I do actually have a bit of a speech.
Let's go for it. Let's hear the speech. I will sit back and let you roll. Go ahead. Go for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Tier. So yes, I have made a speech, and an idea can be the spark that ignites revolution. So this speech is going to show you an idea that I believe is revolutionary. I will finish my speech with the words checkmate ego path to let you know when I'm done. Now, if there's one thing I want most from everyone listening to me, I want you to remember this idea. I hope you remember other stuff, but this idea is important. I bet when an egopath sees my work, specifically this work that explains the mask of perfection, they'll think my work is a joke, that it's laughable, a failure. They'll even think it confirms their delusional belief they aren't evil, and therefore my work is harmless to their massive yet fragile ego. They'll think some ego stroking bullshit like, ha, that's it, that's the best you can do. They have no idea what my best is or what even looks like, despite their delusional belief that they know better than anybody else. These egopaths also have no idea how wrong they are. Egopaths cannot handle reality. When anything becomes too real for their delusions, what happens is ego injury or narcissistic injury. If the ego injury is severe enough, meaning reality is undeniably contradicting most, if not all, of their false perfect self, aka who they believe they are, it results in their own identity crisis. We've covered this, but I wanted to reiterate. I know why they don't develop and never experience real emotions like respect for others, trust, empathy, and love. It's because these things are too real for their delusions. Anything too real has to go. As soon as something becomes too real, it exposes their delusions for what they are, not real. That's what delusions are. These delusions of theirs are believing something to be true by denying any other possibility, no matter how unrealistic their belief is. The delusions are never to be questioned or criticized, much like the egopath themselves, who have a delusional identity. This is why egopaths have to destroy what is real, why they have to destroy the higher man. Their mission to destroy anything real is to protect what is actually not real. When you become too real for their delusions, it is you that must be destroyed. In their delusional and irrational mind, you being too real has imperfected them, and so by destroying you, they will be perfect once more. The things that are never enough for them will never become too real for them, like money. No amount of money will ever be enough for them, so no amount of money will ever be too real for them. They'll never feel greedy because they always deserve more. They'll never have ego injury from too much money. Their delusions are safe as can be with money because it only feeds their delusions. They are powerful and owed everything. But other people being happy around them without their say so, it destroys them, especially witnessing it day after day. It is the psychological equivalent of water drop torture to them and eventually becomes too real. Remember, anything that is too real must be destroyed. They are committed to restoring their delusions to their former glory. They are committed to a personal relationship with their false perfect self, and there's no room for you or anybody else. They only value their delusions about themselves. When something is too real for their delusions, it must be destroyed. Spoiler alert, you aren't part of their delusions. I'll let you guess what that means. There's nothing to fix because they are not broken, they're evil. They are not evil because they indirectly became a monster. They are evil because they choose to remain a monster, because they could change, but they never will. They would need to give up their delusions to stop being evil, and that's just not going to happen. I'll tell you why that is never going to happen. All of their past behavior says so. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and they are no exception to this rule. Yes, their past behavior is the best predictor of their future behavior. It is completely delusionally optimistic to think, despite all their past behavior, they'll decide to cure themselves by prioritizing reality over delusions. All they care about is being able to keep believing their delusions, to keep living their biggest lie. Some of these pure evil monsters will declare they're self-aware as if it means anything. This declaration means nothing, just like their word means nothing. Realizing this allows victims to heal. Any apology from them is just more empty words from an empty being. They don't deserve to be called a human being because there's no humanity in them. They are devoid of empathy and integrity. An evil and fake human being is the more appropriate term. Egopaths actually believe that by publicly revealing to others that they are self-aware about what they are, then magically rights any of the wrongs they have done, both in the past and in the future to come. It doesn't, and it doesn't make them any less of an untrustworthy monster. It's just more empty words. All this, it's not even close to the best I can do. I'm just being real, and that's all I need for my work to be accurate. There's a saying I like. My words will either attract a strong mind or offend a weak one. Turns out a delusional mind is a weak mind. The more delusional a mind is, the less of reality it can handle, and the weaker it really is. The more they avoid reality, the harsher the consequences of avoiding reality is for their mind. I know my words and my works are all too real to be harmless to the pathology of an egopath, no matter how self-aware they preach to be. They still continue to go on believing whatever they want to believe rather than be real with themselves. They will never give up their control to keep believing what they want about themselves, because then they will have to deal with their feelings of self-hatred and self-loathing, the very reasons they invented a false perfect self to pretend away their problems. Egopaths would have to forfeit their mask of perfection in order to admit they are evil, because admitting they are evil is simply too real for their delusions. So I will admit it for them. Egopaths are pure evil monsters, and everyone is better off without them and always will be better off without the egopaths. That's checkmate, egopath.
Nice. Very, very well said. And just the icing on the cake for a wonderful discussion. We're unreal, man. I mean, Connor, I hope that this gets out far and wide. I really do. I don't think it could have been put any clearer or any better, to reiterate what I've said before. Connor, stick around for just a little bit. I'm going to sign off here, okay?
Awesome.
All right. Anyhow, there you go. All right. Like I said, we had several videos before. This will be the final one, at least for now, with Connor. These are the graphics that he's put together for us. Very well thought out, very well said. And I encourage you to look at all of these videos, and encourage you to share them far and wide. If you have any questions, Connor has provided his email. I have provided mine. Again, if you are interested in part of the documentary in any capacity, let me know at tyrravenson@outlook.com. That's TYRRAVENSOHN@outlook.com. And with that, we will see you guys next time. Thanks again.